It is May. It is the Helplink Show, and we are about to get going now with our interviews. We have three interviews today. One with Volunteer Galway and Volunteer Ireland, and the other is with Anam Cara, and the other interview is then with the Rutland Center. So some very interesting details coming up today about what these organisations do normally, and also how they've adapted to working within this time, and how the work they do is relevant to everybody's mental health and emotional well-being. So I hope you enjoy it, and here we go. So everybody, welcome to the Helplink Show. We are broadcasting again from the studio that is my house, but we're very lucky to have on the line Ruth Fagan from Volunteer Galway. Volunteer Galway is part of Volunteer Ireland, a major organisation supporting people to volunteer around the country. Ruth, thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks a million for having me, Lachlan. Delighted. Cheers.
Pleasure. So, Ruth, you have been involved with Volunteer Galway for quite a while now.
Yeah, I have. So Volunteer Galway was originally set up in 2006. So we're in the community now for the last 14 years. I'm there since 2007. So myself and Donegal and also Helen would be the originals, I suppose. Yeah. So yeah, we're working in the community for quite some time. My role there is volunteering development officer. Okay. So a lot of what I do is, I suppose, facilitating positive volunteer roles and a positive volunteer journey, I suppose, for the public, and promoting the benefits of volunteering for people.
Right. Okay, very good. We'll come to what's going on for Volunteer Galway and Volunteer Ireland a little later on. I always wanted to touch base, during this current crisis, but I wanted to kind of maybe start off this conversation with volunteering and mental health. What is their connection, and is there a connection between the two?
Yeah, I absolutely think there is a connection between the two, and I think ultimately the two go hand in hand. And it's interesting that you said connection there when you were asking me the question, because I think that is the common theme with volunteering and enabling positive mental health for anybody. I think having a sense of connection in the community, positive relationships, awareness of what is happening outside of yourself, the experience of helping others, I think, is fundamental to our mental health. And I suppose the whole act of being of service is hugely positive for anybody to experience in their lifetime. So I would say that for me, certainly for the last 13 years working there, I would say that in my experience, volunteering and mental health go hand in hand.
Right. And have you seen, like, for example, with some of the volunteers that you've worked with and brought up, have you seen a positive change perhaps in their emotional well-being because of it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's interesting. I suppose I could talk in a general sense and in quite a specific sense, but I mean, generally what I experience on a day-to-day basis with people just coming in through our doors and asking, can I help? I'd like to help. It's interesting because what I often meet is I suppose people who are on some sort of a journey within themselves, maybe at a point of some sort of, I guess, inner or outer transformation, if you like. Maybe people are taking some time to reflect on what is really important in their life, how they want to spend their time, and offering that. Again, it comes back to that act of service. Yeah. And when you, I suppose, open up possibilities to people around what they can do, that in and of itself gives somebody hope. And so I would see huge, even in the space of a half an hour, sometimes it's interesting. People can come in and kind of, I would see even with their body language, the shoulders might be a bit drooped, they might be a bit down, and they walk out the door and there's sort of like a light in their eyes and the shoulders are a bit back and they're like, nice one. And you can see they've just got this inner motivation because they've got a little bit of direction and hope about what they can do.
Yes. Is there also
on a very regular basis in my work, just experiencing that and witnessing that within people is actually a very beautiful thing.
Yeah.
And then I suppose on a specific kind of a level, there hasn't been a massive amount of research. A lot more needs to be done on the impact of volunteering and that volunteering has on mental health and well-being for people. But in 2017, 3 years ago, Volunteer Ireland did carry out a research study, which was fantastic, where they basically spoke to people around their experience of volunteering and how that did impact on their overall sense of well-being. So they did focus groups and questionnaires. So it was qualitative and quantitative data within the study. And out of that, some really positive, I suppose, statistics or trends came about, where, you know, overall respondents really were reporting a huge increase in their mental health and a sense of purpose. And a sense of feeling that they were, I suppose, offering a useful contribution to their community, and how that impacted them positively was huge for people on a very personal level. You know,
presumably self-esteem is also heightened through that. So because they would feel, like I still volunteer. I've volunteered since I was a teenager, but and I still do it. Because I think in a way it does build up my self-esteem, but it also it gives me this feeling that I have value beyond my day-to-day work, even though that's got a huge value, of course, and all we do it has value. But to be able to give without thinking about receiving, that can give a sense of value. Am I on the right track with that?
No, completely. You summed it up in a really really well. I think that it's something that everybody needs to experience in their lifetime, you know, to feel that you are, as you said, have a purpose, have value, and even to experience the gratitude, not just that you have for all that's in your life, but then to walk into a community organization and the gratitude that they offer you, or a person offers you just by turning up, just by being you. You know, you don't need, like, often people come into me and they're like, oh, I don't have these skills, or what about my English, or maybe I don't have enough time, or can I do this? And I say that simply the fact that you're standing here offering to help is enough, you know, and to realize that and I guess experience that through volunteering in anybody's lifetime, I think it's a very powerful thing.
Certainly is. Yeah. And you mentioned that study in 2017. Is there ongoing? So I suppose let's talk about right now. What's going on right now? Presumably, you have a lot of people trying to help out and work through yourselves this time. How is that going for you?
Very busy. It's amazing. I know we were just chatting there around, you know, the I suppose the potential positives that can come out of this very difficult time that we're in. We had 1,600 registrations on our website in the space of about 5 or 6 weeks.
Wow.
Due to the current crisis. Now, on average, we'd have 1,000 registrations a year, Lachlan. So that'll put it in perspective for you. So to say that community is strong in Galway is an understatement. So it's phenomenal to see that response from people. In the sense of the current crisis and the volunteer roles that are there in relation to COVID-19 response, there actually isn't a whole lot. And what is there has been filled wonderfully by the Community Call Initiative that was set up via the City and County Council. So that work is rolling along. It's ticking over and it's being managed very well and very safely. So that's a real positive. I suppose the big message to give to people right now is, as we all know, stay at home and stay safe. That doesn't mean that people can't volunteer. And certainly there are a lot of opportunities to volunteer right now while at home.
Brilliant. Yeah, because that was a question I had. There's a lot of people, including people like myself, who maybe are asthmatic or and maybe they're a little bit older or whatever it is, and they really shouldn't be going out. But they still want to give their
Yes.
time. So Volunteer Ireland and Volunteer Galway are doing something about that now, are they?
Yeah, so Volunteer Ireland have launched a campaign called Volunteer at Home, which of course gives the message that, people still can volunteer, but we need to do it safely, and the best way to do that is from home. So it's kind of 3 strands to that. And it's really interesting because my eyes have been hugely opened around this just in the last few weeks as well. I wouldn't have thought there was so much possibility and scope to volunteer from home, but there really is. And I think it's really incredible to see how communities are adapting. As a species, we are adapting massively right now. And I think that the volunteer sector will adapt and is adapting. But just to talk about those 3 strands, the first one is called micro-volunteering or backyard volunteering. And that is doing things like, I'll give you an example, the National Biodiversity Centre are asking people to record different wildlife species in their back gardens. So things like insects and butterflies and bees to help them gather data on the wildlife, wildlife species in Ireland right now. So that's a lovely one, and it's a lovely thing, I think, potentially to do with your family too. So you can get your kids out exploring, get them into nature, get them connect to nature, get them down, in the dirt, and you can do that as a family. So I think there's a lovely opportunities to do these small things, whether you have kids or not. But there are some nice things there in relation to micro volunteering. The other thing, that the next kind of strand to that, which is a little bit broader, is virtual volunteering. So online volunteering, which I think we're going to see a whole lot more of in the coming months, as community organisations adapt and want to continue their services. I think online will be, a very strong trend there. So things like board roles, social media. Like we had a charity looking for someone to redesign their logo. So like someone with creative, artistic or graphic design skills, things like that. Marketing, fundraising is going to be a huge thing right now for all community organizations and will be done for a time primarily online. And the beautiful thing with online volunteering is that you can pretty much volunteer for any organization, not just within Galway, but within Ireland or beyond. So it kind of opens up lots of possibilities of the types of things that you might want to get involved in that ordinarily maybe you didn't consider a possibility for yourself. So I think the whole world is our oyster in a sense when it comes to volunteering now. And then there's other lovely ones that come under the term of physical volunteering. So for example, there's knitting projects going on. There are projects where people are writing letters to people in nursing homes. Team Hope are doing the shoebox appeal, that the shoebox appeal that happens every year. So they've started that early now, so people can get stuff in their shoebox. Again, a lovely one to do with your kiddies. And I think like just on the family front, obviously we're all spending a lot of time at home. Parents are with children, but again, when it comes to volunteering, I'm noticing here, like with my 2, there's lots of again possibilities around just having conversations around community and connection and global citizenship and common solidarity, and like to do a little project with that with your children and talk about what it means to be on the planet right now basically is potentially quite a powerful thing that you can do from home. And can instill a very a strong value around, again, service and volunteering and community, I suppose. So for me, I see it as it's a challenging time, but I think it's also a really exciting time.
It's inspiring as well. I mean, like something you were kind of mentioning there around when you're at home and what you can do physically. I saw on I think it was Facebook, I saw a couple of local communities when they were saying going on your 2-kilometer walk, bring a bag with you and pick up stuff, rubbish and that kind of stuff. So
brilliant.
Your own community, or even if you don't go for a walk, within 200 meters of your house, either side,
exactly.
Clean up a little bit and that kind of stuff, and that inspires others in the community then as well.
100%. Yeah. If the neighbours see you at it, they'll be at it then the next day.
Exactly. Well, that's hope anyway. Like, yeah, no,
Yeah.
it's a sad but at the same time beautiful time in how we're coming
Yeah.
together.
It is.
You know.
It is. And I think it's what's really striking me lately, Lachlan, and I'm sure you're very aware of this as well in Helplink. I've never before heard so many people say, I'm struggling, and being honest about their struggle and knowing that they're not alone in their struggle and that it's okay to reach out. And I think that is such a powerful thing right now and a very positive thing. It's like we're really moving away from the stigma and the shame and the mental health being in the shadows somewhere, whereas now we're opening up to say we're all human. We're all got this common sense of solidarity and a common sense of humanity, and it's okay to say I'm not doing great, and I need to talk, I need to connect. In fact, I have to do that in order to be well. So again, I think that's a very, very positive thing in relation to mental health and volunteering.
Yeah, exactly. So if anybody wanted to get involved and find out more, how do they contact you guys?
So the website is the best way, really, Lachlan. That's volunteergalway.ie. You can log on there. You can register with us. We will follow up with you, and we offer you support that way. So the website, and obviously we have email, info@volunteergalway.ie is the best email address right now. And I would say just email for now, because obviously we're not there in the office manning the phones all the time. So I'd just say if people want to contact, drop us an email, we will respond to you, or check out the website. Obviously, if you're looking at the website right now, there's a ton of stuff there that may not actually physically be happening right now due to the current restrictions.
Sure.
But there will be, and there is already, as I said, those sorts of roles, virtual, online type roles. And we'll get more news on that.
Is there more information about that from volunteerireland.ie or?
Volunteer, I would say actually Facebook, probably check out their Facebook page and our Facebook page. Okay. And yeah, the Volunteer Ireland website have info on their campaign up there as well. Yeah,
because the Helplink Show goes out in quite a few counties. So yes, if they're not in Galway based, they go on to Volunteer Ireland.
Volunteer.ie, and then you can find your locality there. Yeah.
Perfect. Ruth, thank you so much for coming on to the Helplink Show. We really appreciate it.
Cheers. Thanks, Lachlan.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So that was Ruth from Volunteer Galway and Volunteer Ireland. And thank you so much, Ruth, for coming on and chatting to us about what's going on in volunteerism, if that's a word, I'm not too sure, but in Galway and on a national perspective as well. So thanks to Ruth. And yeah, looking forward to talking to you all again soon. Welcome everybody to the Helplink Show. It is May 2020 and we are still in this strange land of the COVID-19 crisis. Coming to you again from the studio that is now my home. We are very, very happy to have on the line with us from Anam Cara, Sharon Vard. Did I pronounce the surname correct there, Sharon?
You did indeed, Lachlan.
I'm always worried about pronouncing names because my name is never pronounced correctly either. So it's an absolute pleasure to have you on. We recently got in contact because Helplink, as part of its community response, has launched a platform called mindhacks.ie, where people can come and find video and podcast content on organizations and from individuals as well, professionals, who are dealing with aspects of mental health and emotional well-being. And we were delighted to see that Anam Cara had released some videos recently, and delighted to put those on the platform. So Sharon, thank you so much for coming on. Can you tell me a little bit, what is Anam Cara? Why was it set up?
Anam Cara, it is a national organisation, Lachlan, that supports bereaved parents, so after the death of a child. So I suppose I need a clarified child, like we would support all bereaved parents. So it is regardless of the age of their child
Oh,
or the circumstance of their death. So we would have supported parents whose children are into their 40s. So we, I suppose, as an organisation, identifies ourselves as bereaved parents, and that journey, no matter how young or old our child was, that we go on after they die.
of course. I mean, yeah, that's actually fascinating because I never thought about it. This is part of the reason why we have this show, is because we really want to kind of open up that conversation about what exactly it is that people need support for. And yeah, I mean, look, your whole life as you're always going to be a parent.
Yeah, absolutely. And there is no ideal age for your child to die or ideal circumstances for every parent, you know, and even within a family, Lachlan, you know, the loss of that person, that very special person, is unique. The grief is unique, and how they cope is unique. And that is one thing we have learned over the years in Anam Cara, and that is something that what we try to do is just provide a safe and comfortable place for parents to come, meet with other parents, and just maybe learn from each other and share with each other what has helped them on their journey.
Okay. So when did this organization start?
It started in 2008. We launched in 2008. I'm actually a bereaved mum myself. I lost my daughter Rachel in 2004, and we, after a very short illness, and it was funny. We thought that was the worst part of it, but actually after she died, and you know the funeral, and you have, you know, which is sadly missing now, that lovely support from extended family, friends, work colleagues, neighbours. After all that kind of subsided, then you were left facing into this future without them, and it is a huge adjustment. And to be honest, you know, when we first started on this journey, myself and my husband, I didn't know. I didn't think we'd get through it, but it's funny, you know, you do get through it. Everybody differently, in different ways, but you do. But I suppose at the moment we're so acutely aware in Anam Cara of all those recently bereaved parents, you know, because they're still children, you know, young adults dying through different circumstances, but everything is kind of nearly buried under this crisis of COVID-19. Yeah, so that is why.
How are you dealing with that from that aspect? Are you is there different types of supports, or how are you going about that?
Yes, a very good question. I suppose our initial, how we support parents, we would have an information pack. You know, I have a copy of that there, and people can get that posted out to them. But more often than not, parents come to we've 12 groups around the island of Ireland, and parents will come to those groups. They're facilitated by a professional, but the nature of the group is peer support, you know, parents helping other parents. And then we would run bereavement support evenings, information evenings, which is those videos that you have online. That would be a sample of what we would do. We'd have a really good experienced professional who's worked extensively with bereaved families. They would give a talk to more recently bereaved parents, and again, it's just to give people some sense of what's happening with them. It's a very frightening place to be. You know, I was there. It's such a scary place to be, and the future, because I think the death of a child is different to the death of another family member, because it's not just the death you mourn, their physical presence now, but it was all those future, you know, milestones you thought they'd make, you know, from communions, confirmations, to graduations, to weddings, to grandchildren. You know, it's a loss that's always there, and there's, you know, and there's many milestones that maybe you wouldn't have if it was, you know, an older person who's lived their life. You know what I mean? Yeah. But not diminishing anyone's bereavement on that or loss.
Of course not. But it is a different type of loss and grief. I was actually having a conversation with one of our counsellors, because we were doing these small kind of special editions of the Helplink Show, and one of them we did with one of our counsellors who likes training in grief. And one of the points she made was that we all have this in our head, this idea of grief is a bereavement. But actually, there's loss everywhere in society within that, and I often. She also mentioned the fact that normally you don't actually provide any therapeutic intervention until maybe 6 months afterwards. Is that the same case with a child bereavement?
And I think that was a really good point that therapist made. I think for us, one aspect of our grieving process is social isolating, and I think that's what everybody's experiencing now. So people are grieving for the life that we had just a month ago, 6 weeks ago, and now, we have to adjust.
Yeah.
With regard to your question to counselling, it's an interesting question. We've had parents who've come in and they've been very traumatized, and they've experienced a very traumatic loss of their child. And we know that the groups, for them to go to the groups, it wouldn't help them to be hearing other people's stories of loss about their child and that. So often what we would do is we would link them in with, as I said, those experienced professionals to get some support. It probably isn't counselling, in inverted commas, for the first. It's like a holding, and it is kind of just reassuring, because sometimes, like I'm only speaking from my own experience, like you do think you're losing your mind. You do think that it is such a black hole that you're in and you can never see any way out of it. Like, it is really good to hear someone say what your experience is normal in that abnormal world where your child is now no longer with you, and that it will change. And I suppose whatever tips or coping mechanisms they can share with us to help. Like, often I've know about counsellors who would recommend parents to write down, journal their feelings, again to find somewhere where they can talk, and find someone they can talk with. I think when the death of a child, it impacts the immediate family, but it's so widespread. It's like a pebble in a pond. It reaches so far.
The adage of it takes a village to raise a child, but it also takes a village to grieve a child.
That's right, and people want to help, and I think often people want to try and make things better, or they expect the bereaved mum or dad to be that person they were before their child died. But we're never going to be that person. We're now finding out who we are without this person, and we do find that person. And I would say I'm a much better person, bigger person in every aspect. Unfortunately, I ate my way through grief, but I am a bigger, better person, for having had the experience. I wish I hadn't, but I think every child, no matter how small they are, little babies all the way through to adult children, they all leave a legacy, and it's down to us, their parents and their family, friends. We carry out that legacy. We live on for them.
And you celebrate that life that was there, Yes. Okay. You mentioned these group meetings, and there's 12 of them across the country. How, if you don't mind me asking, how have you dealt with that during this current crisis? Have you gone online? How are you dealing with that? Because obviously people still need support and that kind of thing like that.
Yes, no, and they are obviously face-to-face groups. So yes, we had to very quickly adapt. So the first thing we did was get those videos done before the actual, the travel restrictions came in place. So we got the videos done, Lachlan, and lucky enough we had other videos that parents had already done a couple of years ago. So that's really good as well, because again, for any newly or recently bereaved parent, not only are they hearing the professional talk, but they're also hearing other parents talk as well. So I think, because sometimes we can listen to professionals say, well, it's all very well for you, you know what I mean? You're not living what I'm living. But then to actually hear parents talk about their own experience, and ultimately, I think there's hope. And that's what every bereaved parent needs, is a hope, even though it might be a very small dot of hope, very, very far away, to know that they will get through that. The other thing we've done for any of our existing parents that we already know, they've come to Anam Cara events, we have set up private Facebook groups, so they're communicating on them, and we're also going to put online meeting platforms. So I'm not expecting the groups to get back certainly this side of the summer, so we want to do some online support for them.
Right.
So they will be for parents that are already familiar with Anam Cara, how we operate, because we're not a counselling organisation. We are, like we say in the tin, we are peer support. parents reaching a hand back to help other parents, more recently bereaved. For any recently bereaved parents, people who have, experienced the loss of their child, now recent could be up to the last 2 years and maybe haven't availed of our services, what we're doing is our professional facilitators are providing some one-to-one support. Again, as you said before, that holding space, someone they can talk to, and through that, if somebody was really struggling, we would link them in to another service or a more relevant service or a one-to-one counselling service, or maybe over a period of time, Lachlan, they could then join the parents. The professional facilitator would have a really good feel for that, who would be would be able to cope with the support we do offer
when they'd be ready to.
When they'd be ready for it.
You guys are a charter organization, and so you're probably suffering from the amount of donations and the different fundraising aspects that you might have had plans for. Is there anything that people can do for you now, or do you have any maybe online plans for fundraising in the near future that people should know about, or even if you don't have that, is there a donate button that they can go to?
We do have on the website that donate button, and unfortunately, like every other charity, we are feeling we had to cancel a fundraising lunch. Obviously the mini marathon is another big fundraiser for us, but I suppose one thing, Lachlan, and I probably would be shot by some people, we never target our parents for donations, because we feel they've enough to contend with without being asked to make a donation or contribution. But if anybody wants to make a contribution, and we offer all our services free of charge, we would be delighted. They could go on our website, anamcara.ie, and it's there's a button there. But look, we're not a very expensive organization. It's funny, we run on less than 300,000 euros a year, and that's running 12 groups and various other events, family events. So we're very good, and we have been very careful. So we have, thank God, a reserve. It was always a reserve if you were going to amalgamate with another organization or close down Anam Cara, and it's funny, we only spoke about it probably at our December board meeting, never dreaming that we would be using that reserve now. So I suppose we are lucky in that expense.
Strange times, and hopefully people will listen to this, that they may not be clients of yours, but they may have experienced child bereavement within the family, like we were talking about earlier on, whether it's a direct family or the wider community. Maybe they can go on and help you guys out a little bit to keep this really valuable service going. So if people want to contact you, how do they go about doing that?
So they can either drop us an email to info@anamcara.ie, and I'll spell Anam Cara because it can be spelled different. It's ANAMCARA.ie, or they can give us a call on our information line, which is 085 288 888, and either myself or one of the other team will answer the phone. And it may not be a bereaved parent, it may be someone who knows somebody, a friend or a family member, and even if they talk to us, we'll make sure that, as I said, we get the information pack posted out to that person, and they can hand it to their friend or family member, and hopefully even reading that pack will give them enough, because this pack again it has 8 leaflets, Lachlan, in it, and it covers all aspects: the sudden death of my child, a father's grief, a mum's grief, coping, milestones and challenges, and the all important at this time self-care, how to mind ourselves in all of this, and no more time than not only do you have the grief, that terrible, debilitating, intense grief, you can't go for a walk with your friend, or you can't go for a cup of coffee, or you can't go to the gym and pump the iron or whatever. So it's really important that parents know, reach out to us, and and no matter what we will do whatever we can to support you.
Brilliant stuff. Sharon, thank you so much. So everybody, just again, I'm going to ask for Sharon just to give out that number again, and the website is anamcara.ie. Right?
That's right, and they'll be able to get all the details there. And the information line is 085 288 888.
Brilliant. Sharon, thank you so much for coming on to the Helplink Show. We really appreciate it. We really appreciate all the work you and your team do. So that is it, folks. We have Sharon there from Anam Cara. And if you want to know more about their organization, you go to anamcara.ie. And yeah, so thanks very much. And in a few minutes, we'll be back with the next interview. So welcome everybody to the Helplink Show. We have another great interview coming up here. We have Maeve Mullaney from the Rutland Center on to us to have a quick chat to us about the organization, what it does, I suppose what they're also doing now during this the time of the coronavirus crisis, and hopefully you'll come away with knowing a little bit more about how the whole organization works. Yeah, so Maeve, thank you so much for coming on.
You're welcome. It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me on your show, Lachlan.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. We actually just recently put up the Rutland Centre's videos, some of the content they have there on the new Mind Hacks platform. If everybody wants to go and have a quick look at that, you can go to mindhacks.ie and you'll find lots of very interesting and educational and informative content in video and podcast format around about taking care of your mental health and your well-being, emotional well-being. So Maeve, first, thanks very much for that video content, and thanks for coming on again. So the Rutland Centre, first of all, I suppose, how did you get involved with the Rutland Centre, and what is it?
Okay, so the Rutland Centre is a residential and outpatient addiction treatment centre based in Lochline in Dublin. I've been working there since the end of 2015. I did an MBA back in 2012 in BCU, and throughout that process I became really interested in the not-for-profit and the charity sector. I was working in a not-for-profit at the time, but really throughout the course of my studies, I became aware that this was something, an area that I was passionate about and that I really felt could do, or that I could work in and would really motivate me to do the best that I could for an organisation. So when the opportunity came up to work in the Rutland Centre, I grabbed it with both hands, to be honest with you, and I've never looked back.
Right.
It's a fantastic place, fantastic people working there, and I see every day the impact of the work that the team are doing, and I see people who get recovery from addiction every day, and that's so powerful in terms of motivating yourself and your team to keep doing what you're doing and keep getting the message out there.
Yeah, and addiction in itself can be so varied. So it's not just say alcohol that you guys deal with. You do lots of different types of addictions. Absolutely,
and addiction is so complex, and there's just a myriad of different factors that come into it, and it's different for every family and every individual. So try and recognize that everyone's journey is different, and what we do is we aim to treat the addiction rather than the substance or the behavior that a person is engaging in. So if somebody comes into treatment into our residential program, it's likely that they're going to be in treatment with people who have different addictions than themselves, so a mixture of alcohol, drugs, gambling, food issues, sex and pornography, and everyone is in the same group, the same community, working on the same issues, because we tend to focus on what's driving that behavior, what's driving the need to engage in a substance or behavior. And what we're seeing more and more often now is this comorbidity with other symptoms or other conditions, anxiety, stress, depression. So we try and work with people. There's a lot of work going on behind the scenes at HSE level and Department of Health level around dual diagnosis and trying to come up with a format or a strategy for that as such. But we do a little bit of that ourselves.
Well, just for the listeners, what is dual diagnosis?
The dual diagnosis, and I'm not a clinician, so this is in my layperson's terms. Dual diagnosis is when there's a co-presentation of a mental health or some other disorder plus addiction. Now, we specialise in treating the addiction, but we try and link with as many services as we can to help a person with any other condition that's going on. And we also have a fantastic multidisciplinary team led by a consultant psychiatrist. We have psychotherapists, we have addiction counselors, we have psychologists. So what we try and do is meet everybody's needs that's in our program, by having that multidisciplinary team that we can match clients up with the right practitioner while they're in treatment with us, and that ensuring that we have the skill set to deal with whatever lands on our door as well, and whoever needs treatment, that they can access it.
Yeah, and speaking of landing on the door, can you maybe bring me through what it's like for a person to engage with your centre?
Absolutely.
From the very beginning, I suppose.
Yeah, and I think that's a really important thing to talk about, because I think a lot of people think you have to be referred by a doctor, and then there's a lot of people think maybe it's possible to sign somebody else in. So this is a good opportunity to kind of bust those myths a little bit. You don't need to be referred by a doctor or by any other professional. You can self-refer. In most cases, actually, people do self-refer, but it actually starts with a family member picking up the phone and saying, I'm worried about my loved one. What should I do? That's where our engagement would start, and that's how we'll start helping, by giving you a bit of advice and a bit of support, because if you're living with someone in addiction, it's incredibly difficult. We know that it affects the whole family very significantly. So that's where we would try and start supporting. And then it's up to the person themselves, when they're ready and at a point, to pick up the phone and make their appointment for an assessment, or confirm an appointment for an assessment. That has to be done by the person themselves, because there has to be a willingness to engage. They have to be ready. It isn't possible to force somebody into treatment or to sign them in. Legally, it's not possible, but also it's not right for the person. The person has to be ready for treatment. And that's one of our core values, is that, you know, it's the right treatment at the right time for that person. And that's different for everybody. So we will make an appointment for an assessment. You will come in for the assessment. It normally takes about anywhere between an hour and a half. And we would always encourage you to bring a family member or a loved one or a support person with you, because it's a lot to take in. It can be very emotional. You're probably have recently been using or engaging in a behavior. So you mightn't be thinking as clearly as you might need to take in all the information. And then that session is really about, is there a diagnosed addiction, and are we all in agreement about that? Is residential treatment the right option for you at this time? What are your needs? What are the needs of the family? And are you ready and willing to engage in it, to make the most of it? Because it's really important that when someone comes into treatment, that they're ready, and that they are, you know, it's terrifying, it's very scary, it's a huge step for any person or family to take, but there needs to be a certain level of willingness to change there. Because the last thing we want is for someone to come into treatment and not be ready for it, or not be ready for what it's going to bring, and leave early, and that's hugely disruptive to their family, but most importantly to themselves, because it's such a big step to take to come into treatment, that it really needs to be at the right time for them.
Right.
So once all that is agreed, obviously there's the formalities and the paperwork and those bits and pieces that need to be done, and we will give you a pack, and we will give you instructions and work with you. Our admissions officer will keep in touch with you and work with you, and you'll be supported by the assessment counsellor in the interim period between assessment and admission. And then on the day of your admission, you'll be given a set time to come. Hopefully a loved one will come with you to drop you off. You'll drop in your bags, we'll go show you up to your bedroom, and then we always try and time it so that you go down and have a meal with your community. So say example, we'll do the admissions before lunch, so we get through all the paperwork, all the settling in, and then you have lunch with your peers. And that's really your first introduction to the community that have now really become your family for the next 5 weeks, and they're where you're going to really get the majority of your support. And find that kind of, being able to relate to a community that's in the same position as you, maybe slightly ahead, so they can give you advice about how to cope with these first few days. And that's really important, that you start to build up those relationships, because we know all too often in addiction, you may have been isolating, you may have been, feel quite detached from your family and your friends and your loved ones and your employers. So this is really the first step back into that socialization and making that connection, and connection is so important in recovery.
Right, the social connection is extremely right. Okay. And then you go into a series of weeks. Then how many weeks is that?
So it's 5 weeks. Our program is 5 weeks long, so it's 35 nights, and it's pretty structured program. So there's a set timetable for every day. Attendance at all groups is mandatory. So you will go into psychoeducation in the morning. Start off with mindfulness in the morning, actually, then into a psychoeducation lecture. So that could be anything from anger management, dealing with emotions, right up to spirituality. Then you will go into group therapy. There'll be 2 group therapy sessions a day, every day. There'll be one-to-one counselling also, and then throughout the week, Tuesday is family day. We have stress management classes. We offer yoga. There's art therapy, dance therapy. So lots of different modalities to support and help you get the most out of the program that we can.
Yeah,
at the week,
like you were saying, like everybody's addiction is different, but and so the treatment needs to encompass that as well. Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. And people will respond differently to different modalities. So some people will really embrace that group therapy. Other people don't like it at all and find it hugely uncomfortable. Some people absolutely love dance therapy or music therapy. Other people don't. But the whole community takes part in everything so that everybody gets the benefit. And that everybody finds a way that they can respond to and a way to open up in a safe and comfortable environment for them. And I think that's really important.
Yeah. And this happens over the 5 weeks. And you mentioned family there, and quite a few times you talked about loved ones and the need for that them to be a huge part of this process. Presumably that's not just because they care about the person who has the addiction, but also because they're going through a lot themselves through this whole
Absolutely.
process.
Absolutely. And we would recognize that addiction is a family disease. So it isn't, it's never the case that the family haven't been hugely impacted by the behavior and that the consequences haven't spilled over and had a ripple effect out amongst the family, both your nuclear family and same. So we try and make sure the family are involved right from the very start. So bring a family member to the assessment, and that ethos is there throughout the whole treatment. We have family day every week. We have family supports every week, and that that's really important because we know that in recovery, you're much more likely, the individual with the addiction is much more likely to get recovery if the family are getting their own recovery as well, and that it's a joint effort.
Right.
And that again, we're moving away from that isolation and that thought that, oh, there's something wrong with you over there, we're fine, we're all in this together, so everybody needs to get recovery together. And that's why then when individuals go into aftercare, we also offer free aftercare to the significant others of anybody that's been in treatment. So it could be a husband, a wife, a partner, a parent, an adult child. We will offer free aftercare. They'll be placed into their own closed group with other significant others, so that they have peer support, that they have people who are in the same position as them dealing with the same issues. And that's a weekly activity in a weekly group for a minimum of a year. And we just think that's so important that the whole family gets involved in that, so that everybody gets the opportunity to recover.
Right. And that word aftercare, that presumably is the same for the addict that is going through this. They do their 5 weeks with you, but there's also follow-up after that, so they're not just out you go and that's it kind of thing, people
absolutely. Absolutely. And actually people would often say that's when the real work starts, because when you come into residential treatment, you're in a very safe environment, but you're quite cocooned and you're quite isolated, and real life, in inverted commas, is always going to be out there waiting for you. So the real work really starts when you have to go back and face the challenges of daily life and what that throws at you. So for us, it's really important that we have a good program in place to support you through that, and especially those early months where it's really critical that you're supported, because that's where maybe the highest chance of relapse might be. So it's important that we engage, and we know from our own figures and stats that you're much more likely to get a long-term recovery if you engage in the aftercare program and you use the resources that are there. So for us, aftercare looks like you're placed into a weekly group with peers, and that's specifically selected to meet your needs as well, to make sure that you get the best support possible. Those groups are facilitated by two, what we call them facilitators. They're people that have completed the program, that are in a stable recovery, and whom we've trained to be able to support you. So it's a peer support group. It's a weekly attendance. And then in addition to that, you've got access to our own full-time counsellors for phone support, for one-to-ones, and to the consultant psychiatrist should you need it.
Right.
And that's there as well. And that's there. We would ask people to do that for a minimum of 1 year, but preferably 2.
Right.
So that you really get a solid foundation. And it's the same for family members. And when we do our medallion ceremony twice a year, we give out medallions to family members as well who have participated and completed, because that equally needs to be acknowledged, and the work that they've done needs to be acknowledged and marked as well. And there's always a huge response to that. It's fantastic.
Yeah, I can imagine. So that's a really good kind of first-person view of what it would be like to engage your services. During this time of the coronavirus crisis, obviously because you're an in-treatment service, a lot of your services must have had to adapt. What's going on right now for you guys? How are you supporting people?
Yeah, and it has been very difficult, no more so than for any other treatment provider in lots of different sectors. What we've done is, back in early March, maybe even the end of February, we moved all our aftercare meetings to online platforms to try and mitigate against the risk of infection, and to try and minimise the amount of people that were visiting the centre, because our main goal was to protect the people in residential care, that we didn't have a positive case, and that everyone was able to finish their treatment safely. And we achieved that, and we're really happy with that. The challenge now is getting back up and running. How quickly can we do that? And how are we holding people in that interim period who now have presented with a need for treatment? So that's a particular challenge for us at the moment. But the online aftercare is working exceptionally well. Very high levels of engagement. We've done lots of phone support, lots of video one-to-ones, and I think we moved really quickly on that. So that's running really smoothly now, and is working well for people. So please God, that'll continue to do so for as long as we need. I think there is a definite demand for services. And I think it's going to be really important for the sector as a whole, and for the HSE and the Department of Health, to support services getting back up and running, because I think the knock-on effect of people not getting treatment is going to be an extra burden on the health system and on families, more importantly. So I think that's a key challenge for the whole sector, because we can all see the blurring of boundaries around, for example, drinking at home, drinking midweek. We see the reports about the volumes of alcohol. We see things
Gambling
like virtual
Grand
nationals and all those kind of things. So, there's a lot of triggers there. People are isolated now. So we always promote connection, get out there. That's, it's very difficult to do at the moment. So there's lots of risks out there for people in recovery or people who are struggling with addiction at the moment. So I think for us, the challenge would be, how do we get back up and running, and what does that look like? And we're just trying to figure that out at the moment. How do we, adhere to public health advice and offer a safe service, but one that gives people what they need? So that's where we're at the moment.
Sounds good. Well, it's great that you were able to adapt fairly early on to support people. If anybody wants to get in contact with you guys, are the phones still being answered at the minute, or is it email, or how is it working?
They are. No, the phones and the email are still up and running. So you can email info@rutlandcentre.ie. You can phone Dublin 01 494 6358. Now we are obviously working, a lot of us are working from home and resources are limited, so we'd ask people to bear with us, but we were doing our best to make sure we get back to everybody who makes contact with us as quickly as we can. Our website is rutlandcentre.ie. We've got lots of resources in the news section, the news and events section there, and also our social media pages, so Twitter and Facebook at Rutland Center. There's lots of information, and we're trying to stay engaged with people and encouraging people to stay engaged with us until this passes and we know where we're at.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you so much, Maeve. That is brilliant. Loads of information there for people, and let's hope that we can get back to a new normal, because I think there are pluses. There's lots of minuses, obviously, to current situation, but there's also pluses. We're all learning new ways of reaching out to people and that kind of thing as well. So there is some good coming out of it, thankfully, and organizations like yourselves at the Coalface are really helping with that too. So once again, thanks very much, Maeve. Really appreciate it.
Most welcome. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So everybody, that was Maeve from the Rutland Centre, and you can find out more information on rutlandcentre.ie or on their Facebook or Twitter accounts at Rutland Centre. Yeah, so very interesting stuff there. If you have any issues with addiction, or if you have a family member, a loved one, somebody you know that you feel, especially during this time, that their addiction is becoming an issue, maybe contact the centre and see if they can support you with that. That's it, everybody, for another Helplink show, and we will be back to your listening ear in next month. And thank you to the Rutland Centre, Anam Cara, and Volunteer Galway, Volunteer Ireland for coming on and telling us what's going on with them. Don't forget to check out their websites, and also if you have time and you want to see what's going on with Helplink, check out helplink.ie and our mindhacks.ie, our new platform as well, with lots of video and podcast content. So thank you very much for listening, and remember to keep your head up.